Welcome back, everyone. We are talking with Dr. Kimberly Brown. She is the director of forensic evaluation team at Vanderbilt Medical Center. We're talking about the insanity plea from a clinical perspective. So it's been just fascinating to talk with you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise. And I want to ask in this segment here, are there any well-known cases that maybe all of us have heard about that give people maybe the wrong perception or a misguided perception of the insanity plea and how it works in the courts? Is there a case that really stands out?
Depending on your age bracket, you may remember the John Hinckley case. So John Hinckley was the person who was obsessed with Jodie Foster and thought that he could really win her over by assassinating the then President Ronald Reagan. And so he opened fire and he shot Brady and shot at Reagan as well. And he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, he was actually found not guilty by reason of insanity on a somewhat expanded version of the insanity defense. And if you remember this period of time, there was real public outcry that John Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity. People didn't think that that was fair. They really loved, Ronald Reagan was a really beloved president, and they thought that Hinckley was getting off easy. The reality is Hinckley was relatively recently released from St. Elizabeth's Psychiatric Hospital, so he did not get off easily at all. But what happened after the Hinckley case is that many jurisdictions changed the definition of the insanity defense to restrict it further. And currently, Tennessee and many other states use this what's called modified McNaughton test, but basically it says that the person couldn't appreciate the nature or wrongfulness of their conduct. So many times the insanity defense is defined by key political events in our society, and I think John Hinckley is a perfect example of how the insanity defense changed, not because of any advancements in science or because they were listening to mental health professionals, but because there was real public outcry that he was found insane.
At the top of the show, you said it's so rare that this happens, and yet here that is a very high-profile case. I am of the age bracket that I remember. And when that happens, you have a president, someone attempts to kill a president, assassinate a president, and then the person is declared not guilty by reason of insanity. That's going to get a lot of attention. Yes. So it's only happening rarely, but it happens in a case like that. People are going to be of the mindset, boy, it happens all the time.
Right.
And so that case did lead to some changes all across the country.
Yes.
And you feel like some of those weren't maybe in the best interest of all of us.
Well, I mean, they were dictated by public furor and outcry, not by any kind of science or clinical advancements. And so, I just want to point out that this is, again, people can be very mentally ill. They can be very ill at the time of the crime. They could have committed the crime because of their mental illness, but still won't meet this very narrow test that the legal system has determined is the.
We might have another issue with the weather. I can hear it raining. So it's pouring down rain on the roof here at the station. I'm sure you can't hear it, but I can hear it. And it's probably pouring down rain where Dr. Brown is. And so I'm going to guess that has something to do with the fact that our Zoom is frozen a couple of times now. So tough weather out there. Fascinating discussion. I certainly remember John Hinckley. And I remember that it seemed like that was not fair, that he was declared that way. And I know that the depictions in the media did increase for the insanity plea after that Hinckley case, where he, of course, was the person who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. So, all right, we're trying to find Judge or Dr. Kimberly Brown and bring her back here on Zoom. I don't know if we can take a break while we do that. Well, we can just keep waiting. What are your thoughts? Give us a call. What are your thoughts about the insanity plea? Is it used too often? Is it not used enough? I thought it was very interesting. I asked her about the typical case here in Davidson County, and she did not go to, well, it's a murder, and we go in and we assess and we come back after X number of days. She went right to aggravated assault. The typical case is not a murder. The typical case is something like an aggravated assault. It was interesting when we had a caller say, what about people who snap? And there's a whole TV show. You can probably find it on cable right now if you're flipping around. There's a whole TV show called Snapped where it talks about people that just all of a sudden lose it and commit some horrible crime. She thinks that is more of a myth, that people don't break, they bend, that the truly the people suffering from the worst and most severe mental illness, it's evident over a course of time. And that was interesting to hear as well. And so some interesting questions tonight, some interesting calls, and the rain is interfering with our conversation with Dr. Kimberly Brown. And I was very interested when I asked well-known cases, and she immediately went to Hinckley. I have some others. Jeffrey Dahmer, I have that somewhere. That was a well-known case. Here's a guy, it's a murder case. He killed people, put their heads in his refrigerator, and the defense tried to say he was not guilty by reason of insanity, and a jury did not go for that. Now, she says it's very hard to get a jury to agree that someone is not guilty by reason of insanity, in part because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know how long the person will be in a mental institution. And Dr. Brown defined how long that is. It's when they are deemed no longer a risk, and the mental illness is a situation where they are no longer a risk to society. So there's, why don't we take a break? Let's take a break and we will come back, hopefully with Dr. Brown.